In a distant corner of the galaxy, aboard a massive alien warship, Commander Zorvath stood in front of a large screen. The screen showed images of Earth, a small blue planet floating silently in space. Zorvath was not impressed. To him, Earth looked like any other weak and unimportant world. His sharp eyes scanned the pictures sent by their advanced telescopes. He saw cities with tiny buildings, roads that twisted like veins, and primitive machines rolling on the ground. Pathetic, Zorvath muttered under his breath. Turning to his second-in-command, a tall alien named Vrax, he sneered. These creatures call themselves intelligent. Look at them. Their weapons are outdated, their ships laughable. They wouldn't last a minute against us. Vrax nodded but kept his thoughts to himself. He had heard rumors about strange signals coming from Earth recently, but he didn't dare question his commander's judgment. Zorvath was known for his arrogance, but he was also one of the most feared leaders in the Vorthok Empire. Meanwhile, millions of miles away on Earth, General Matthew Hayes sat in a dimly lit room. Maps and holograms floated in the air around him, showing plans for humanity's first-ever interstellar fleet. The project had been kept secret, even from most governments. Only a handful of people knew the truth about what was being built. Matthew leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. This was the biggest gamble Earth had ever taken. At the center of the operation were two key figures: Laura Bennett, a brilliant engineer with a knack for solving impossible problems, and Daniel Carter, a strategist who could think 10 steps ahead of anyone else. Both were working tirelessly to bring Project Dawn to life. Laura spent her days poring over blueprints and running simulations. Daniel spent his nights planning battle scenarios, imagining how Earth's fleet might fare against unknown enemies. But there was something unusual about the designs Laura worked on. Every morning, she received new instructions through encrypted messages. These messages came from someone who called themselves Architect. Whoever this person was, they seemed to know more about advanced technology than anyone on Earth. Laura often wondered who Architect really was, but she never questioned the orders. The designs worked perfectly, and that was all that mattered. On the day Commander Zorvath dismissed Earth as insignificant, Laura was testing a prototype shield generator. It hummed softly as it powered up, creating an invisible barrier around the test chamber. She watched in awe as energy blasts bounced harmlessly off the shield. If this worked on a larger scale, it would change everything. Humanity might actually stand a chance. General Hayes entered the lab just as Laura turned off the machine. "How's it coming along?" he asked, his voice steady but tinged with urgency. "It's ready," Laura replied, wiping sweat from her brow. "The shields are stronger than anything we've ever seen. And the engines, well, let's just say we won't have trouble keeping up with anyone out there." Hayes nodded, though his expression remained grim. "Good. We'll need every advantage we can get. I don't know when or where they'll come, but they will. And when they do, we have to be prepared." Unbeknownst to both of them, the aliens were already watching. Commander Zorvath leaned closer to the screen, zooming in on the construction sites where Earth's fleet was taking shape. His lip curled into a sneer. "They're building ships now. How quaint. Let them waste their time. When we arrive, they'll regret ever thinking they could challenge the Vorthok Empire." Little did Zorvath know, Earth's fleet wasn't just another attempt at defense. It was something far greater, a product of human ingenuity pushed to its limits. And soon, the Vorthoks would learn exactly what humanity was capable of. But for now, they scoffed, unaware that their mockery would soon turn to fear. Laura Bennett sat at her desk, staring at the latest set of blueprints glowing on her screen. The designs were unlike anything she had ever seen before. They were intricate, precise, and far beyond the limits of human engineering. She leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. Every time she thought she understood how something worked, another layer of complexity revealed itself. It was maddening and fascinating. The instructions had come again that morning, sent by someone who called themselves Architect. Laura didn't know who this person was or where they were located. All she knew was that Architect's designs worked flawlessly. The shield generator she tested yesterday. Perfect. The engine modifications. Revolutionary. Whoever Architect was, they weren't just smart. They were genius-level brilliant. Still, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. Why would someone with such extraordinary knowledge stay hidden? She glanced over at Daniel Carter, who was pacing near the window. He was muttering under his breath, running through battle scenarios in his head. Daniel always did this when he was stressed. Today, though, his pacing seemed more frantic than usual. "Do you think we're moving too fast?" he asked suddenly, stopping to look at Laura. His brow was furrowed, and his voice carried a note of unease. "We've been rushing this project for months now. What if we missed something? What if there's a flaw we haven't caught yet?" Laura sighed. She had asked herself the same question countless times. "I don't know," she admitted. "But we don't have a choice, do we? If the aliens show up tomorrow, or even next week, we need to be ready. We can't afford to wait." Daniel nodded reluctantly. He trusted Laura's judgment, but the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on him. This fleet wasn't just a collection of ships. It was humanity's last hope. If it failed, Earth would fall. General Matthew Hayes entered the room just as Daniel resumed his pacing. Hayes looked tired, his face lined with worry, but his eyes were sharp and focused. "How are things coming along?" he asked, glancing between Laura and Daniel. "The shields are solid," Laura replied, "and the engines are performing better than expected. But," she hesitated, unsure how much to say about Architect. "Some of these designs, they're advanced. Almost too advanced. I'm not sure how." Hayes held up a hand, cutting her off. "Don't ask questions you don't want answers to," he said firmly. "Right now, all that matters is getting these ships operational. Everything else can wait." Laura nodded, though her curiosity burned brighter than ever. Hayes turned to Daniel. "What about strategy? Are you ready?" "As ready as I'll ever be," Daniel muttered. "But I still think we're rushing into this blind. We don't know what we're up against out there." Hayes gave him a grim smile. "That's why we're counting on you to figure it out." As the meeting ended, Laura returned to her workstation. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she stared at the blueprints once more. Something about them felt familiar, like she'd seen similar patterns somewhere before. But where? And why couldn't she remember? Meanwhile, light years away, Commander Zorveth watched Earth's progress with growing amusement. His spies had intercepted fragments of encrypted messages, bits of data flying between Earth's scientists and engineers. To Zorveth, it looked like chaos, humans scrambling to piece together technology they barely understood. He laughed aloud, earning confused looks from his crew. "They're trying to build warships," he scoffed. "Look at them, scrambling around like insects. Do they really think they stand a chance against us?" Vrax, standing nearby, shifted uncomfortably. "Perhaps we should take them seriously, sir. Their progress has been surprisingly rapid." Zorvath waved a dismissive hand. "Nonsense. Even if they manage to finish those ships, they'll still be nothing compared to our fleet. Let them waste their time. When we arrive, they'll learn the hard way what happens to fools who dare challenge the Vorthok Empire." Unbeknownst to Zorveth, his arrogance would soon cost him dearly. Earth's fleet was more than just a desperate attempt to defend humanity. It was a masterpiece crafted by a mind so brilliant it defied explanation. And while the aliens laughed, humanity worked tirelessly, preparing for the day when they would prove their strength, not just to the Vortex, but to the entire galaxy. The day finally came when Earth's fleet was ready to launch. General Matthew Hayes stood on the observation deck, watching as the sleek ships rose into the sky one by one. They were beautiful, shining silver vessels with sharp edges and glowing engines that hummed with power. Each ship had been built using the mysterious blueprints sent by Architect, and every test so far had proven their capabilities. Still, Hayes couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty in his chest. These ships were humanity's first step into the stars, but they were also stepping into the unknown. Laura Bennett and Daniel Carter watched from the control room as the fleet formed a line in orbit. Laura's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted settings on her console. She knew these ships were strong, but would they be enough? Daniel stood beside her, his eyes glued to the monitors showing live footage of the ships. He muttered under his breath, reciting strategies he'd spent weeks perfecting. "Relax," Laura said, trying to sound confident. "We've done everything we can. Now it's up to them." Daniel nodded but didn't respond. His mind was racing through every possible scenario, imagining how the fleet might perform in battle. What if something went wrong? What if the aliens attacked sooner than expected? Hours later, the fleet began its maiden voyage. The ships moved smoothly through space, their advanced engines leaving trails of light behind them. For the first time, humanity ventured beyond the safety of its solar system. It was a moment of pride and fear. Then, without warning, alarms blared across the fleet. A small alien scout vessel had appeared on the radar, moving quickly toward the human ships. The crew braced themselves, unsure what to expect. This was their first encounter with an alien species, and no one knew how it would go. The scout ship slowed down and sent a communication signal. On board the lead cruiser, Captain Ryan Mitchell accepted the transmission. The face of an alien appeared on the screen, a creature with pale green skin, sharp teeth, and cold, calculating eyes. It sneered at the humans. "You are from Earth?" the alien asked, its voice harsh and mocking. "What are you doing here?" Captain Mitchell straightened, trying to appear calm despite the knot in his stomach. "We're exploring," he replied. "This is our territory now." The alien laughed, a grating sound that made everyone wince. "Your territory? You think your tiny ships can claim anything? You are children playing with toys." Before Mitchell could respond, the alien ship fired an energy blast at the cruiser. Everyone tensed, expecting the worst. But instead of exploding, the cruiser absorbed the attack effortlessly. Its shields shimmered for a moment, then returned to invisibility. The crew stared in disbelief. Even Laura, watching from Earth, gasped when she saw the readings. "What just happened?" Daniel asked, leaning closer to the monitor. "Their weapons should have torn right through us." But the shields held firm. The alien ship fired again and again, each blast bouncing harmlessly off the cruiser's defenses. Commander Zorveth, observing the scene from afar, clenched his fists in frustration. "Impossible," he growled. "How are their shields holding?" On board the cruiser, Captain Mitchell allowed himself a small smile. "I think it's our turn," he said, giving the order to return fire. The human ship unleashed a barrage of plasma bolts, striking the scout vessel with pinpoint accuracy. The alien ship faltered, its systems failing under the assault. Within moments, it turned and fled, disappearing into the void. Back on Earth, cheers erupted in the control room. Laura hugged Daniel, tears streaming down her face. "It worked," she whispered. It actually worked. General Hayes watched silently, his expression unreadable. He felt a flicker of hope, but also caution. This was only the beginning. The aliens would not forget this humiliation, and they would surely come back stronger next time. Far away, Commander Zorveth seethed with anger. "Those primitives got lucky," he muttered. "But mark my words, they will pay for this insult." And so, the stage was set for a war unlike any other. Humanity had proven it could fight, but the real battle was yet to come. The news of the scout ship's defeat spread quickly through the Vorthok Empire. Commander Zorvath's failure was a stain on his reputation, and whispers of doubt began to circulate among the alien council. Emperor Krugar, a towering figure with glowing red eyes and jagged armor, sat at the head of a long table in the imperial chamber. His sharp gaze swept over the advisors, who now debated what had happened. "They used some kind of advanced shielding," one advisor said nervously. "It absorbed our energy weapons completely. Impossible, snapped another. Humans are primitive. They couldn't have developed such technology on their own. Zorvath clenched his fists but kept silent. He knew the truth. Earth's ships were stronger than anything he had anticipated. But admitting that would only make him look weak. Instead, he leaned forward, his voice low and dangerous. They must have stolen the technology, or perhaps they've made an alliance with another species. Either way, it doesn't matter. We crush them, and we take it for ourselves. Emperor Krieger raised a hand, silencing the room. His deep voice echoed like thunder. Enough. Whether they stole it or built it themselves, the humans have proven they are not as helpless as we thought. This changes nothing. The Vorthok Empire does not tolerate defiance. Prepare the fleet. We will show these creatures the true meaning of power. As the council dispersed, Zorvath lingered behind, staring at the holographic map of Earth's solar system. His mind raced with questions. Who had given the humans this technology? How had they managed to build ships so quickly? And most importantly, how could he redeem himself after such a humiliating loss? Meanwhile, back on Earth, celebrations erupted in mission control. Laura Bennett and Daniel Carter couldn't stop smiling as they reviewed the data from the battle. The shields had performed perfectly, absorbing every attack without fail. Even General Hayes allowed himself a rare moment of pride. "This is just the beginning," Hayes said, addressing the team. "We've shown them we can fight, but they'll be back. And next time, they'll bring everything they've got." Laura nodded, her excitement tempered by caution. "We should double-check all systems. Make sure there aren't any weaknesses they could exploit." Daniel agreed. "And we need to prepare for larger-scale battles. One ship against one scout." That was easy. But if their entire fleet shows up? Hayes cut him off with a firm nod. "I know. That's why we're going to push harder than ever. Every second counts." Unbeknownst to them, Ethan Cole, the mysterious architect, was watching the events unfold from his secluded home in Montana. Sitting in front of a wall of monitors, he analyzed the battle data with quiet satisfaction. His designs had worked exactly as intended. But Ethan wasn't celebrating. Instead, his face was grim, his hands trembling slightly as he typed furiously on his keyboard. "They'll come again," he muttered to himself. "And when they do, they won't hold back." Ethan knew the Vorthoks better than anyone else on Earth. Years ago, he had studied fragments of their technology recovered from crashed ships. He understood their arrogance, their ruthlessness, and their overwhelming strength. Humanity had won the first round, but the real war was still ahead. On the other side of the galaxy, the Vorthok Armada mobilized. Thousands of ships, each bristling with weapons, prepared to descend upon Earth. Their engines roared to life, lighting up the darkness of space. Zorvath stood on the bridge of his flagship, his jaw tight with determination. This time, there would be no mistakes. This time, humanity would learn its place. Back on Earth, Laura received a new set of blueprints from Architect. Her heart sank as she read the message attached. "Upgrade the fleet. Fast. They're coming." She didn't need to ask who they were. The aliens weren't just angry. They were preparing for war. And humanity's greatest challenge was about to begin. Laura Bennett stared at the new blueprints on her screen, her hands trembling slightly. The message from Architect was clear. Earth's fleet needed upgrades, and fast. But there was something different about these designs. They were even more complex than before, filled with notes and schematics that seemed almost impossible to follow. Laura leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. Whoever Architect was, they weren't just sending instructions anymore. They were preparing for a war. General Matthew Hayes walked into the lab, his boots clicking against the floor. He glanced at Laura, noticing the worry on her face. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. "It's Architect," Laura replied, pointing at the screen. "They sent us new designs, upgrades for the fleet, but I don't think we have enough time to finish everything." Hayes frowned. How long will it take? At least a week, if we work around the clock, Laura said. But if the aliens are coming sooner? They are, Hayes interrupted. His tone was grim. We intercepted their communications. Their fleet is already on the move. We have days, maybe less. Laura felt a chill run down her spine. She looked at Daniel Carter, who stood nearby, his arms crossed. He had been listening silently, his expression tense. "Do you think we can pull it off?" she asked him. "We don't have a choice," Daniel replied. "If we don't upgrade the ships, we're dead anyway." Hayes nodded. "Get started. Use every resource you need. And Laura," he paused, meeting her eyes, "find out who Architect is. If this person knows so much about the aliens, we need to talk to them directly." Later that night, Laura sat alone in her office, staring at the encrypted messages from Architect. She had tried tracing the source before, but it always led to dead ends. This time, though, she noticed something. A small detail she had missed earlier. A timestamp on one of the messages matched an old file buried deep in Earth's classified archives. Her heart raced as she dug deeper, following the trail until she found what she was looking for. Architect wasn't some shadowy organization or alien ally. It was a person, a human being. A reclusive genius named Ethan Cole, who lived in a remote cabin in Montana. Laura stared at the name on the screen, her mind struggling to process it. Ethan Cole. The same Ethan Cole who had disappeared from public life years ago after publishing groundbreaking theories on energy manipulation. It couldn't be a coincidence. The next morning, Laura boarded a military jet bound for Montana. General Hayes had approved the trip, insisting she bring backup. As the plane soared over vast forests and mountains, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to meet someone extraordinary, or possibly dangerous. When they arrived at Ethan's cabin, the scene was quieter than expected. The house was small and unassuming, surrounded by tall trees and silence. Laura knocked on the door, her heart pounding. After a moment, it creaked open, revealing a man in his late 40s with messy hair and tired eyes. He looked surprised to see visitors, but didn't seem afraid. "Ethan Cole?" Laura asked, her voice steady despite her nerves. The man nodded slowly. "Who's asking?" "My name is Laura Bennett. I'm part of the team building Earth's fleet. Your designs saved us during our first encounter with the aliens." Ethan's expression darkened. "I figured as much. Did you come here to thank me, or to arrest me?" "Neither," Laura said quickly. "We need your help. The aliens are coming back, and they'll be stronger this time. We need to upgrade the fleet, but we can't do it without you." Ethan sighed, stepping aside to let them in. Inside the cabin, walls were covered with notes, diagrams, and pieces of alien technology. Laura realized this was where Ethan had spent years studying fragments of crashed UFOs, reverse engineering their secrets. "I warned you," Ethan said bitterly. "This isn't just about shields and engines. The Vortex won't stop until they destroy us, or enslave us. What I gave you was only the beginning." Laura nodded. "Then tell us what comes next. Please, humanity's survival depends on it." For a long moment, Ethan didn't respond. Then finally, he turned to her. "All right, but you need to understand something. This isn't going to be easy, and not everyone is going to make it out alive." As Ethan began explaining his plans, Laura knew one thing for certain. Humanity had found its greatest weapon. But winning the war would come at a cost no one could yet imagine. Ethan Cole worked tirelessly alongside Laura Bennett and her team, poring over blueprints and running simulations. His mind was a whirlwind of ideas, each one more daring than the last. The upgrades he proposed were astonishing. Cloaking devices to make Earth's ships invisible, plasma cannons capable of tearing through alien armor, and enhanced engines that could outmaneuver even the fastest Vortex fighters. But as brilliant as his designs were, they came with a warning. "This isn't just about winning battles," Ethan said, his voice low and urgent. "The Vortex are ruthless. They'll throw everything they have at us. If we're not careful, they'll find a way to turn our own technology against us." Laura nodded, her brow furrowed in concentration. She trusted Ethan's expertise, but the scale of the task ahead felt overwhelming. Every second counted, and there was no room for mistakes. The engineers worked around the clock, installing the new systems onto the fleet. Meanwhile, Daniel Carter focused on strategy, devising plans for how to use the upgraded ships effectively. General Matthew Hayes oversaw everything, his presence a constant reminder of the stakes. He visited the workshops daily, checking progress and offering encouragement. "We're doing something incredible here," he told the team one evening. "Not just for Earth, but for humanity itself. Don't let up now." Despite the pressure, morale remained high. Word spread among the crew that Ethan Cole, the mysterious genius behind their success, was working directly with them. Many were in awe of his knowledge, while others wondered if relying so heavily on one person was wise. Ethan himself seemed uneasy, often retreating to quiet corners of the facility to think. He spent hours staring at maps of the solar system, tracing possible attack routes the Vortex might take. One night, as Laura walked past Ethan's workstation, she noticed him scribbling notes furiously. "What are you working on?" she asked. "A failsafe," Ethan replied without looking up. "If things go wrong, and they probably will, we need a backup plan, something to give us an edge when all else fails." Laura hesitated, then sat down beside him. "You've done so much already. Are you sure you can handle this?" Ethan gave her a tired smile. "I didn't ask for this responsibility, but it's mine now. All I can do is try." Far away, the Vorthek Armada raced toward Earth, its massive ships casting shadows across space. Commander Zorveth paced the bridge of his flagship, his frustration giving way to cold determination. The humans had humiliated him once, but he wouldn't let it happen again. This time, he vowed, Earth would burn. Emperor Kregar contacted Zorveth via hologram, his red eyes blazing with fury. "You will crush them," Kregar growled. "Show no mercy. Make them regret ever standing against us." Zorveth bowed his head. "It will be done, my lord." As the days passed, tension mounted on both sides. Back on Earth, final preparations were underway. The upgraded fleet gleamed in orbit, its weapons primed and shields humming with energy. General Hayes addressed the captains of each ship during a video conference. "This is it," he said. "The fight of our lives. Stay sharp, trust your training, and remember why we're here, to protect our home." On board the lead cruiser, Captain Ryan Mitchell reviewed tactics with his crew. Daniel's strategies had been distributed to every ship, ensuring everyone knew their role. Still, Mitchell couldn't shake the weight of responsibility pressing on his shoulders. If anything went wrong, millions of lives depended on him. Meanwhile, Ethan continued refining his failsafe, a top-secret weapon designed to disrupt the Vorthak's entire fleet. It was risky, untested, and could easily backfire, but Ethan insisted it was necessary. "Sometimes," he told Laura, "you have to gamble everything to win." As the alien armada drew closer, Earth braced for impact. The skies above major cities filled with military aircraft, ready to defend against any ground assault. Civilians huddled indoors, watching news reports and praying for victory. Humanity had never faced such a threat before, but it had also never been so united. In the final hours before battle, Ethan stood alone in the control room, gazing at the glowing map of Earth's defenses. His hands trembled slightly as he whispered to himself, "Let's hope this works." And then, the first wave of Vorthak ships appeared on the horizon. The war was about to begin. The battle began with a deafening roar as the Vorthak Armada descended upon Earth's fleet. Thousands of alien ships, their jagged hulls glinting like knives, unleashed a barrage of energy blasts. The humans had positioned themselves near Saturn's orbit, using its rings as cover while they waited for the enemy to strike. When the first wave hit, Earth's ships didn't falter. Their shields shimmered under the assault but held firm, deflecting every attack. Captain Ryan Mitchell gripped the controls of his cruiser, his knuckles white. "Return fire," he shouted, and the order rippled through the fleet. Plasma cannons roared to life, sending bolts of searing energy streaking toward the vortex. The aliens hadn't expected such precision or power. Several of their ships exploded instantly, their wreckage drifting into the void. Commander Zorveth watched in disbelief from his flagship. His sharp eyes darted across the battlefield, trying to make sense of what was happening. How were these primitive humans matching them blow for blow? The upgrades Ethan Cole had designed gave Earth's ships an edge, speed, agility, and firepower far beyond anything the Vortex had anticipated. Laura Bennett monitored the battle from Earth, her fingers flying over her keyboard as she coordinated repairs and recalibrations. She spoke constantly with Daniel Carter, who analyzed the chaos in real time. "They're focusing on our left flank," Daniel warned. "Tell Captain Mitchell to pull back and regroup." Laura relayed the message, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. On board the cruiser, Mitchell executed the maneuver flawlessly, drawing the vortex into a trap. As the aliens surged forward, Earth's ships split apart, surrounding them. Plasma cannons fired from all sides, cutting through the vortex formation like a knife through paper. But the aliens weren't defeated yet. Their numbers were overwhelming, and they adapted quickly. Zorvath ordered his ships to form a tight defensive cluster, shielding their larger vessels while smaller fighters darted around the human fleet. For every alien ship destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. Ethan Cole paced the control room on Earth, his mind racing. He knew the humans couldn't win this battle through sheer strength alone. They needed something unexpected, something devastating. That's when he made the call. "Activate the EMP pulse," Ethan said into his headset, addressing Laura. "Now." Laura hesitated. The EMP pulse was part of Ethan's failsafe, a risky weapon designed to disable entire squadrons of alien ships by overloading their systems. But it required precise timing. If used too early or too late, it could leave Earth's fleet vulnerable. "Do it," General Hayes ordered, his voice firm. Laura nodded and sent the command. Across the battlefield, Earth's ships released a massive electromagnetic pulse. The invisible waves spread outward, engulfing dozens of Vortex ships. Their engines sputtered, their weapons went dark, and their shields collapsed. Panic erupted among the alien ranks as their once mighty fleet became sitting ducks. Zorvath slammed his fist against the console. "What is this sorcery?" he snarled. His own ship shuddered as the pulse knocked out auxiliary systems. For the first time, fear flickered in his eyes. On board the cruiser, Captain Mitchell seized the opportunity. "All ships, advance," he commanded. Earth's fleet moved in, finishing off the disabled alien vessels with surgical strikes. Explosions lit up the darkness of space, turning the battlefield into a fiery inferno. Back on Earth, cheers erupted in the control room. Laura hugged Daniel, tears streaming down her face. "We're winning," she whispered. But Ethan remained silent, staring at the monitors. He knew better than to celebrate too soon. The Vortex still outnumbered them, and their commanders wouldn't give up easily. This victory was only temporary. As the fighting raged on, cracks began to show in Earth's defenses. Ships took hits, shields failed, and casualties mounted. Humanity had proven it could fight, but the cost of survival was becoming painfully clear. Still, for the first time in history, the galaxy saw that Earth wasn't just a target. It was a force to be reckoned with. And the Vortex were learning that lesson the hard way. The battle raged on, and the strain began to show on both sides. Earth's fleet fought with everything it had, but the relentless waves of Vortex ships were taking their toll. Shields flickered and failed. Hulls cracked under the pressure of repeated attacks. Captain Ryan Mitchell gritted his teeth as alarms blared across the bridge of his cruiser. "Damage report," he barked. "Port side shields are down to 10%. An officer replied, his voice trembling. Engine 2 is offline. Mitchell clenched his fists but forced himself to stay calm. Divert power from non-essential systems. Keep those guns firing. On board other ships, similar scenes played out. Crew members scrambled to repair critical systems, while pilots maneuvered through a storm of enemy fire. Humanity's advantage was slipping away, and everyone could feel it. Back on Earth, Laura Bennett worked frantically to keep the fleet operational. Her hands flew over the keyboard as she coordinated repairs and rerouted power to damaged ships. Daniel Carter stood beside her, his eyes glued to the monitors. "We're losing too many ships," he said grimly. "At this rate, we won't last another hour." Laura didn't respond. She couldn't afford to lose focus. Not now. Every second counted. She patched through to Ethan Cole, who was still pacing in the control room. "Ethan, we need something. Anything to turn this around." Ethan stopped mid-step, his mind racing. He glanced at the map of the battlefield, studying the movements of the alien fleet. Then an idea struck him. "They're overextending," he said suddenly. "Their larger ships are moving forward, leaving their rear exposed. If we can hit them there." Laura nodded, understanding immediately. "I'll send the coordinates to the captains." She typed quickly, sending the new plan to every ship in the fleet. Captain Mitchell received the update and wasted no time. "All units, regroup and target their rear flank," he ordered. The human ships broke formation, circling around to strike where the Vorthacs were weakest. The sudden shift caught the aliens off guard. Explosions erupted among the enemy ranks as Earth's plasma cannons tore through their unguarded ships. Commander Zorveth watched in horror as his fleet crumbled before his eyes. His once proud armada was falling apart, piece by piece. "Retreat," he shouted, his voice shaking with anger and fear. "Fall back to defensive positions." But retreat wasn't so simple. Earth's EMP pulse had left many of the Vorthac ships disabled, drifting helplessly in space. Others were too slow to escape the human onslaught. Captain Mitchell led the charge, picking off stragglers and forcing the aliens into disarray. As the tide turned, Ethan felt a pang of guilt. He knew this victory came at a cost. On the monitors, he saw flashes of destroyed human ships, their crews lost in the void. He clenched his fists, reminding himself why he had done this: to protect humanity, no matter the price. General Matthew Hayes entered the control room, his face lined with exhaustion. "How many did we lose?" he asked quietly. "Too many," Laura replied, her voice breaking. "But we held them off. For now." Hayes nodded, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You did good, Laura. All of you. This isn't over yet, but we've proven something today. We've proven that we can fight. And win." Meanwhile, aboard the Vorthac flagship, Commander Zorveth faced Emperor Kragar via hologram. The Emperor's red eyes burned with fury. "Explain yourself," Kragar growled. "How could you let this happen?" Zorvath swallowed hard, struggling to find words. "The humans, they're not what we thought. They have weapons, technology." "Enough excuses," Kragar snapped. "Find out who gave them these tools. And when you do, bring me their head." As the transmission ended, Zorveth's jaw tightened. He vowed silently to make the humans pay for their defiance. But deep down, doubt gnawed at him. What if the humans weren't just lucky? What if they truly were capable of standing against the Vorthac Empire? Back on Earth, Ethan stared at the stars through the control room window. The battle was over. For now. But the war was far from finished. Humanity had won a crucial victory, but the cost weighed heavily on his heart. He whispered softly to himself, "This is only the beginning." And somewhere in the vastness of space, the surviving Vorthac ships regrouped, plotting their revenge. The galaxy would soon learn that Earth wasn't just fighting for survival. It was fighting to prove its place among the stars. The Vorthac Empire was in chaos. Emperor Kragar sat on his throne, his glowing red eyes burning with fury as he listened to reports from the battlefield. The humans had not only survived, They had fought back with a strength no one had anticipated. His advisors whispered nervously, trying to explain how Earth's fleet had managed to outmaneuver and overpower their forces. But Krager didn't care about excuses. He wanted answers. "Find out who is behind this," Krager growled, his voice like thunder. "Who gave them the weapons? Who designed their ships?" Commander Zorvath stood stiffly before the Emperor, his pride wounded but his determination unshaken. "My lord, we have intercepted communications from Earth. They mention someone called Architect. Whoever this person is, they are responsible for the human success." Krager leaned forward, his sharp teeth glinting in the dim light. "Architect," he repeated, the name rolling off his tongue like poison. "Bring me this architect. Alive, if possible. If not, destroy them." Zorvath nodded, though doubt lingered in his mind. The thought of facing Earth again made his stomach churn. The humans weren't just lucky. They were dangerous. Still, failure wasn't an option. He would find this architect and crush them, along with the rest of humanity. Back on Earth, Ethan Cole watched the alien transmissions with growing unease. Using equipment he had built himself, he intercepted fragments of the Vortex messages. When he heard the name Architect, his blood ran cold. They knew about him. Somehow, they had traced his work back to its source. Ethan turned to Laura Bennett, who was sitting nearby. "They're coming for me," he said flatly. Laura's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "They know I'm the one who designed the fleet. They'll demand my surrender, or worse." Laura shook her head firmly. "We won't let that happen. General Hayes will protect you." Ethan gave her a grim smile. "You don't understand. This isn't just about me anymore. If they think threatening me will make you back down, they'll stop at nothing. I need to end this myself." Before Laura could argue, Ethan activated a secure communication channel and broadcast a message directly to the Vorthic Empire. On screen, his face appeared, calm, resolute, and unafraid. "I am Ethan Cole," he began, his voice steady. "I am the architect. Your empire has underestimated humanity, and now you've paid the price. Every weapon, every ship, every tactic your forces faced, it came from me. A single human being." The Vorthic Council stared at the screen in stunned silence. Commander Zorvath clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. Emperor Krager leaned back in his throne, his expression unreadable. For a moment, no one spoke. Finally, Krager broke the silence. "One human did all this?" he asked, his tone dripping with disbelief. "Yes," Ethan replied. "And if you come for us again, I'll make sure you regret it." The transmission ended, leaving the room in stunned silence. Krager's advisors exchanged nervous glances, unsure what to say. Even Zorvath felt a flicker of doubt. How could one man, a single human, be responsible for such destruction? But Krager's anger quickly overtook his shock. "This changes nothing," he roared. "If one human can cause this much trouble, imagine what their entire race is capable of. We must crush them completely. Leave no trace of their existence." Zorvath bowed deeply. "It will be done, my lord." Back on Earth, Ethan turned off the transmitter and exhaled deeply. Laura looked at him, her expression a mix of awe and fear. "Why did you do that?" she asked. "Now they'll focus everything on you." Ethan shrugged. "Maybe. But now they know who they're dealing with. Humanity isn't just some weak species to be pushed around. We're smart, we're resourceful, and we're not afraid to fight back." General Hayes entered the room, his face serious. "You've just declared war on the entire Vorthic Empire." "I already did that when I started building these ships," Ethan replied calmly. "All I did was put a name to the enemy they hate most." Hayes nodded slowly, respect flickering in his eyes. "Then we'll stand with you. Whatever happens next, we're ready." As the team prepared for the inevitable retaliation, Ethan gazed at the stars once more. He knew the Vortex wouldn't give up easily, but he also knew something else. Humanity had proven it could rise to any challenge, and if the galaxy wanted a fight, Earth was ready to deliver. The Vorthok Empire was in turmoil. Emperor Kregar's fury echoed through the halls of his palace as he demanded a swift and brutal response to Ethan Cole's message. "One human dares to defy us." Kregar snarled, slamming his fist on the armrest of his throne. "This is an insult to our empire. Destroy them, all of them." Commander Zorvath stood before him, trying to mask his unease. The image of Ethan's calm face haunted him. How could one man have caused so much damage? But Zorvath knew better than to question the Emperor. Instead, he bowed deeply. "We will crush Earth and bring this architect to justice, my lord." As the Vorthoks prepared for their next assault, morale among their forces plummeted. Stories of Earth's fleet spread like wildfire through the ranks. Soldiers whispered about the strange shields, the devastating weapons, and the invisible force that seemed to guide every move humanity made. Fear began to take root, something the Vorthoks had never experienced before. On Earth, preparations continued at a frantic pace. General Matthew Hayes worked tirelessly to strengthen planetary defenses, knowing the aliens would come back stronger. Laura Bennett and Daniel Carter coordinated with Ethan Cole, implementing his final upgrades to the fleet. Every ship was armed to the teeth, every strategy refined to perfection. Ethan spent long hours alone in the control room, staring at the stars. He knew the coming battle would decide the fate of humanity. If they failed, Earth would fall. But if they won, it would send a message to the galaxy. Humanity was not to be underestimated. Finally, the day arrived. The Vorthok Armada descended upon Earth's solar system, larger and more menacing than ever before. Their ships blotted out the light of the sun as they advanced, determined to erase humanity from existence. But Earth's fleet was ready. Captain Ryan Mitchell led the charge, his cruiser darting through the chaos with unmatched speed. Plasma cannons roared, tearing through the alien formation. Earth's cloaking devices allowed ships to strike from unexpected angles, sowing confusion among the Vorthoks. The EMP pulses Ethan had designed disabled entire squadrons, leaving them vulnerable to attack. Commander Zorvath watched in horror as his fleet crumbled. His once mighty armada was falling apart, piece by piece. "Retreat," he shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. "Fall back." But retreat wasn't enough. Earth's fleet pursued, delivering blow after blow until the Vorthoks were forced to flee. Explosions lit up the darkness of space as the remaining alien ships limped away, their tails between their legs. Back on Earth, celebrations erupted. People poured into the streets, cheering and waving flags. In the control room, Laura hugged Daniel tightly, tears streaming down her face. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." General Hayes approached Ethan, who stood quietly by the window. "You saved us," Hayes said, his voice filled with gratitude. "You've given humanity a future." Ethan nodded but didn't smile. "This isn't the end," he said softly. "There are other threats out there, bigger ones. But today we proved something important. We proved that humanity can fight and win." As the dust settled, the Vorthoks retreated to their empire, licking their wounds. Emperor Kregar sat in silence, his red eyes dimmed by defeat. For the first time in centuries, the Vorthok Empire had been humbled, and by a species they had dismissed as insignificant. In the days that followed, Ethan emerged from hiding, hailed as a hero. His name became legend, a symbol of human ingenuity and resilience. General Hayes promoted Laura and Daniel, acknowledging their vital roles in the war effort. And as Ethan gazed at the stars, he felt a mix of pride and caution. Humanity had taken its first step onto the galactic stage. But the universe was vast and full of dangers. Still, one thing was certain. Earth was no longer just a small blue dot in the cosmos. It was a force to be reckoned with, and anyone who doubted that would soon learn the hard way.